So the whole thing is operating outside the rule of law. And there's no better way to shatter confidence in an economy and in a government, for that matter, than to have the most important thing the government is doing be outside the rule of law.
So what do you think of that, Julian Epstein? Besides the criminal investigations, of which many more are going to be on the way, it is going to be a gigantic embarrassment to the White House and the Treasury. Don Luskin is adding some fuel to this fire. He is saying basically the whole purpose is wrong, it is not constitutional, and I suppose I'd like to just pile on and say this is the greatest exercise in central planning. We may wind up not only General Motors, car suppliers, we may bail out the Boston Globe, we may bail out the New York Times. Julian, before this is over, we'll probably bail out all your friends on the Democratic side of the aisle.
Well, I would say a couple things to that, Larry. I would say, one, the proper controls are in place. The OIG system, the Office of Inspector General, and referring it to the Justice Department is exactly the way the system is supposed to work. That shouldn't be a surprise. Secondly, we are controlling there was far less government intrusion into this process than there was under the Paulson plan in the Bush administration, because, as you know, the government is not actually taking over the toxic assets the way Paulson and President Bush had proposed to. Third, with respect to Mr. Luskin's point, if you read the enabling legislation from Congress gives the Treasury Department pretty broad discretion as to what to do. It does not have to, as a constitutional matter, enumerate all of the various different financial transactions that the Treasury Department is authorized to do. This is a suit on this that's been brought by the former Majority Leader, Dick Armey. It's a suit that will probably be laughed out of court. The notion of improper delegation is not a very serious legal claim.
But Don Luskin, what about this? Is the slippery slope, for heaven's sakes. This is like, not only are we moving away from free market democratic capitalism into some planned economy, but now Julian Epstein, who I believe, Julian, you're a lawyer, aren't you? You used to work for the Judiciary Committee. That's why I find this so painful, Don. Julian Epstein, of all people, is telling us that the constitutional constraints don't matter. You got a reaction to that?
No, I'm saying it's a bad constitutional argument.
Let me give my reaction to that. Let me give my reaction to that. I have not made a constitutional point at all. I don't know how to do that.
That's what you just did. Your point you just made was a constitutional point. Improper delegation is a constitutional point.
I suppose, excuse me, the point I made was that if you just pull up a copy on the web of the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act, you can see what it is that it enables Treasury to do with this $700 billion. It does not enable Treasury to go out and, say, plant a row of maple trees in Kansas City, Missouri. So presumably if Treasury went out and planted a row of maple trees in Kansas City, Missouri, somebody ought to be asking a question of whether the Treasury is acting properly within the scope of its authority.
That's the point I'm making. You are making a constitutional argument. You were saying that Congress improperly delegated.
I'm making a point about the rule of law.
Well, you don't understand the point that you're making.
When the Congress allocates $700 billion for an agency of government to do
A, with due respect,
that agency of government ought to do A. It ought to do B. It should not do C. It should not do D.
Can I just tell you as a matter of law?
How can you possibly defend that?
Wait a second.
You're
I don't want to get hung up.
I just want to tell him he's confused as a matter of law. He is making a constitutional argument, and it's a bad argument.
I am confused. The American public is confused because Julian Epstein, you are going to have so many more of these criminal charges of embezzlement and mail fraud and whatever. That is going to happen. I want to ask you, how do you think that's going to affect TARP and its credibility, which is pretty low? Even Democrats are starting to run from TARP now. And I want to ask you the second point. This thing, which started out as a puny $750 billion bailout, is now grown to $3 trillion and rising. It is, in effect, a second budget. The actual budget of the United States is about $3.5 trillion. TARP is a second budget. And you know what it is, Julian? It's a central planning budget. It's a state direction of the economy budget.
It's not anymore.
It's like we have one budget that has a social safety net, and the second budget is for central planning and socialism, for heaven's sake.
My response to that,
that's why we should end it, downsize it, extinguish it.
My response to that is I think it's an intellectually dishonest argument. I think you have to start with the proposition as to whether or not it was good to have a TARP program or not.
No.
Had we not had a TARP program, I think the financial industry would have collapsed.
I don't think
when
so.
you do have something
Julian,
like that,
what
you're going to have the problem of fraud.
According to you, that program has no definition. that
It's
once a
very well
so-called
defined
TARP
in the
program is
statute.
put
If
in
you would
place,
take a
Treasury
second to
could
read
do
the statute.
literally
One at a
very well
time. One at a time.
according
Let
to you.
that.
The question
Go ahead, Don,
the
make
question
your
is
point.
whether you have it to begin with, and
Right.
secondly, do you have the
But what
watchdogs
if?
in place?
Don,
You are
let's get
unwilling,
the last
you are
word.
unwilling to
Place under
limit
the Obama
Treasury.
administration.
You are
Don.
unwilling to limit Treasury to any particular set of actions authorized to any particular law. So what do you mean when you say it's a good idea?
You obviously have not
According
read
to you,
the
there are
statute.
no
I
limits.
got it.
The
I'm
once
asking-
this law
Don
is
has
passed,
not read the
government takes
statute
over the
here.
banking
I
sector.
will
That's
just say
fine
to
according
you,
You have no
you.
idea what you're talking
Julian
about. You have not
Epstein,
read the statute.
my good friend Julian Epstein, you are the best. You're great. I got to tell you, TARP is swallowing up whole chunks of the economy. TARP is swallowing up unbelievable financial resources in this country. And I think Don Luskin is right. TARP is, in fact, swallowing up constitutional freedoms that we should enjoy.
And most economists will tell you it's better than sticking your head in the sand, Larry.
Oh, God help us from most economists. Julian Epstein, thank you. Don Luskin, thank you.